This is Woomera. It's a name which has become familiar. It's a name which was borrowed originally from the Aboriginals. To them, this is a Woomera. It's an attachment to fit on the end of a spear, to make the spear fly up straight and true. Well, today, it's not spears that fly out from Woomera, but rockets.
And they're off again. When one story ends, another begins. Surely many stories will be written in this war, and mine will be no exception. Mine is the story of Squadron Leader Tarik Salih, callsign Turk, of the Royal Australian Air Force. On a slightly more normal day, I am a test pilot for the major Australian military and civil aerospace facility located in South Australia, the RAAF Woomera Range Complex. The WRC is a highly specialized ADF test and evaluation capability operated for the purposes of testing defense material. For several years, I've taken part in daring special operations conducted from this base, taking some kind of experimental weapon with me, from the cutting-edge next-generation fighter jets to advanced unmanned aerial vehicles and even to space planes. All the way down to drones that could fit in your hand. I would usually work in tandem with either the RAAF, the IUN, or our own Z Special Unit. But now, a new task and a new war faces me and my wingmen. We've been receiving training with new powerful warbirds thanks to our American friends. Once again, we're working in tandem with the men and women of Dreamland, a top-secret U.S. Air Force base in Groom Lake, Nevada. Some would refer to it as Area 51. Already, the pilots of Groom Lake have hit the ground running with their top-secret weapon, the TR-3B Black Manta. Civilians in the town of Muttaburra reported seeing a triangular shape at night, described as large, silent, hovering, moving slowly, and displaying pulsating colored lights. The Black Mantas managed to secure air superiority on the front lines nearby, allowing us to attack the Brez recon units down below to keep those people safe. That was merely our final test run when that blood-red dawn was on the rise. With those early operational successes, Air Force Command now knows we have the right tools for the job. Now the shadow boxing is over. It's time for my squadron to take the monster's head on. Rough weather today. So much the better. They're raising hell over our heads.
All systems continue nominal. Range to target 90 miles. Right.
Now this is a plane that I could fly for a while. The F-19 Ghostриder. A previously classified experimental stealth fighter designed by the U.S. Air Force. For a long time it was hidden within the facilities of Dreamland, designed around the same time the F-117 was taking flight. A lot of top-tier features on the Ghostриder have aged somewhat. We would later reap the benefits, as exporting them at a time of crisis was now in the cards. High above us, the fighter squadrons are playing a deadly game of bluff, both sides goading the other into battle. Few knew it, but the war's already kicked off, and we're getting a quick one in. We're finally doing something smart. I've already seen covert strikes like this during the invasion of mainland China. The sad truth is the Ghostриder handles like ice skating, a consequence of her ungainly design. But I don't care. Stealth and agility are better anyhow.
Range to primary target 60 miles. All systems continue nominal. No radars locked onto us. No radars locked on us. Looking good. Roger.
Playing our game to the limit, drawing in years of experience. The primary target is the Brez Command Frigate, high above the range. Second primary is the highway bridge. The mission's getting hairier. More radar signals detected. Our stealth makes detection harder, not impossible.
Keep on the deck. Play by the rules.
Just like we've rehearsed for the last 6 months in the Woomera test range. Even our own AWACS was hard-pressed to find us. And it was far better, wasn't it? That's what we're here to find out.
20 miles, wingman. Still no FCS emanations on us. Still no surge radars. Radio chatter's mostly west of us. Weapons armed.
Target 18 miles. Still on course. 10 miles to the minute. 1 minute 40 seconds. 16 miles.
12 miles to target. Target's jinking. Interceptor just swept over us. 12 o'clock, very high. That must have been one of the Empire's interceptor designs. Climb! Climb! Now we're vulnerable, broadcasting our presence. Climb faster, squad. Tally-ho! Target's going evasive. Too late. Firefox 2. Firefox 2. Target down. Jeez. Nothing like the movies. Primary target destroyed. Now for the hard part. High tower reporting all 3 command frigates destroyed. Trumpeter, trumpeter, trumpeter. Okay, boys, make it count.
Here come the attack boys. If the plan is still a go, one half will be classic Hornets, another half B-5Cs, following the Yank F-19s and TR-3 Black Mantas, spanning out to their targets. Behind them, Super Hornet fighters will take the enemy fighters, directed by Wedgetail AWACS. Third wave will be the RUN birds on Wild Weasel raids.
Coming up on second primary. That's a decent double bridge. 2 lanes, dating back a while. So much the better. Tanks on approach, probably second echelon. Sand battery on East Hill. AA radars are still active. Pave tack nominal. Illuminate targets. Targets lit. Still no radars.
Cutlass, this is Boomerang. Target's lit.
Roger that.
The horizon's bright yellow. 4 Singapore Strike Eagles just made a single pass on the airstrip, leaving thermobaric bombs in their wake. A half-dozen attack gunships up in flames. 1 anti-ground missile at the battery. 1 for good measure. Then 1 JDAM at the bridge.
SAMs, evade! Boomerang 1 reporting Delta Hotel. The bridge is destroyed. Damn, that's one of ours. Good hits, good hits. One more thing to do. There. Use your flares. Mark the targets. Boomerang flight, all targets down. Egress.
We're right behind you.
The second flight of fighters is clearing an air corridor now. The enemy formations haven't had time to counter.
Operation Dreamland had lasted 27 minutes. It had been costly. 2 Woomera planes, 2 strike aircraft, and several RUN aircraft were lost. Yet it had been a success. Over 20 alien fighters had been destroyed by Allied fighters, and perhaps a dozen more destroyed by SAMs. The elite squadrons of the enemy had been brutalized, and because of it, for the time being, we would own the night skies over our territory. Bridges and highways had been successfully cut. The enemy ground offensive won't be supported by the second echelon, nor any late arrivals. The attacks against the bases would give us air parity, at least for the moment. We had achieved our most crucial objective of reducing ground superiority. The land battle would now be fought on more even terms. So yeah, that's what's been happening lately. Wow, Turk. Sounds like you had one hell of a night. Bloody well done. Hello, Turk. Hello, Wedgetail. I am Agent Schroeder.
Yes, AZO. I trust things are going well on your end?
Oh yes, we've just set up a new base in Gracemere. That's currently our leading base on the front lines.
Nice.
Also, remember when the terrorists got to Northern Territory? One of the first places they went to was Arnhem Land, and all they found were empty buildings. Everything had been removed. Museum exhibits, simulators, files, planet rocks and secure storage, everything. All of the potential launch center employees, their families, the rocket scientists and their families had flown the coop, and their fury at finding nothing was, from what I hear, unrestrained to put it mildly. Australia's Space Forces set up at Woomera Test Range and flew a number of DoD-dedicated rocket flights during the war. Word has it that a couple of those flights were not for satellite deployment, but had cameras, ground mapping radar, and a whole host of sensors for reconnaissance work. Even with the war on, the rockets were busy with those DoD missions, and they delivered a spacecraft behind schedule. Apparently, our new star cruiser, HMAS Sydney, is being completed right now in Victoria. About time we started setting up a full-on space force. If Russia, the US, and China can do it, and we can't do every job up there. By the way, here's another funny moment. One of the Ghostriders guys who got run out of town and fell back to New South Wales had an issue with a Sky News TV station's aggressive reporting. He did a low-altitude flyby of the station and dumped and burned. The pilot got a talking to, but their point was made, and the station backed off. By the way, Wedgetail, I still haven't read the book. What's the title? Books on the wars that I've read include Brave Gharials, the 3rd Tank Battalion at War, AFVs in the Invasion, The Eagle and the Sparrow, A History of the Iron War, and currently reading Johnny Red, Carrier Operations in the Second Pacific War. It's called Red Storm, a young guerrilla's view of the Iron War. I haven't had cause to speak to Aisling Lotus. She's still in deep space on a far journey, but she wrote the book well. It's a shame she blames herself for Joaquin and Corey in the book, of course. She wrote it 2 years after the war. Me thinks she has made peace with it by now. Most of the guerrillas we dealt with was when they'd hand us prisoners they'd managed to exfil, which wasn't very often, or when we'd ask them trafficability or enemy orbit information. Never forget when, as proof, a Brabach MRR was operating near Normanton in the Iron War, a guerrilla presented me a pair of blood-encrusted Brabach Major's shoulder boards. Kid doing it said they'd taken them from the owner after she killed them. I suspect it wasn't quick or easy from the look in the kid's eye. She couldn't have been older than 17. Wonder how many of those kids made it out after it was all over. Something tells me, not well. Thank God Parliament grew a brain and made it possible for partisan vets to get VA bennies. They earned it. Another book I recommend is by this guy. Hemingway? Oh. He embedded with the 7th Light when they set out to relieve the final Shire of Flinders in the invasion. It's called Not Just Racing, and it's the best stuff about the war I ever read. The only reporter I ever saw was a guy from the Sydney Morning Herald, but he couldn't write a thing about us. We were strike force, and thus not able to say much about a thing we did. I met that guy, because his part of the 7th Light fought alongside my own outfit of the 14th AD for a while during that battle. I made lieutenant the old-fashioned way back then. Jesus, don't tell me you were there clearing out the mill in Hughenden. Christ, this guy made it sound nightmarish. Close quarters against dug-in alien VDVs with nothing to lose? I was there. In my opinion, Hemingway made it sound worse than it was, but not by much. The LT brought it when we gave close fire support with HE. These VDV guys fought dearly. In the end, we had to call in 5 airstrikes before they gave up. By the way, Schroeder, we might have met. Did you meet a bespectacled Army Staff Sergeant with MIA branch insignias in Rockhampton after the last war, who helped pencil whip that East Timor Defense Force Colonel's 1190 form through to get him his immigration pass and WPP placement? I remember a very large guy in civvies and a beat-up pair of aviator glasses who had a .45 on his hip, who was in the office with said colonel. He didn't say a word, but cleaned his nails with a K-bar while they did the initial work on the form for the colonel. The K-bar bit was a bit much, though. He was going to get approved. It was just a case of making sure all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. If so, you picked a good guy. I can't say what happened to him. East Timor intelligence still wants him dead. Amazing, even after what happened, Dilly's still running things down there. but suffice to say, he's safe, happy, and loves it where he is. No, that was not me. I do think I know who it was. Sounds like it was one of our old shooters. He had been ACO hostage rescue before the war, and was always a bit much to deal with, but was a good man with an SMG. I spent several years after the invasion trying to tie up loose ends, mostly in various third world hellholes. As to Colonel Norberto Babo Costa, we even got his family out of East Timor after the last war. Traded some medication with some diplomat from a neutral country acting as a go-between. Hope you guys don't mind chatting with 2 active duty generals, an Air Force Reserve Wing Commander, and 2 active squadron leaders. Number 3 was flown by then Flying Officer Robin Sagiro, callsign Zorro. She's now stationed in Woomera on F-18As. Her backseater now flies C-130s for the RAAF. He was injured in a post-war F-18 crash and told he never could fly an ejection seat equipped plane again. So he went to C-130s in his home state. He's a squadron leader now, if I remember. My then backseater is now in RAAF Curtin, and the IUN Reserve set up a reserve F-15E wing down south. Guess who's now there? By the way, Robin and a wingy were called in first. Then a PC-9 acting as an airborne FAC called me and my wingy and asked if we wanted in. He'd spotted reinforcements heading your way. T-72s are BMP-2s, and those plasma bombs came in handy. There was a pair of Shilkas and a pair of SA-9 vehicles with them, so 1 pass only. You know, if I could add something, Zorro's going up the ranks in record time. Her baptism of fire was in the opening attacks, so she hit the sky soaring. She'll probably hit squadron leader by next January. Interesting. Hope to see more of her again soon. I've read Ashling's book, got my copy before she took part in the Second Iron War and died in the traditional sense. When you read about what she went through before going into the hills, now you know why she was so vicious in combat. I guess you could say she had survivor's guilt about the 2 comrades. Schroeder? Did your East Timor colonel say what happened to the comrades, or did the movie get it wrong, as Hollyweird or its Australian counterpart often does? If you guys want more info on the F-18, look for Hornets vs. Falling Stars, the FA-18 in the Invasion, by Freddie Riviere and Roland Stratton. It was Riviere's last book he wrote before being shot down in the campaign of mainland China. They treat the RAAF, ISAF, as in 2 ISAF reserve fighter squadrons that flew the FA-18C, US Marine Corps, US Navy, and the foreign squadrons, both the US Air Force Volunteers and the exchange squadrons from ISAF, Malaysian Air Force, Spanish Air Force. I had to keep those 2 separate. The Spanish flew in Queensland while the Malaysians were at Tyndall Air Force Base in Darwin, and even the Swiss on their home front. Anyone interested in the F-18 should pick up a copy. It's still in print. Mostly thanks to Spark Publishing. Who knew that some of our old comrades would not only become authors, but publishers as well? Wonder how that girl's doing. You guys from Flinders should thank the C-130 folks who flew supplies into the highway airstrips at Malkara Air Force Base during the siege. Without them, the aliens would have taken the towns, with the usual consequences for the civilians. The C-130 guys and gals flew supplies in, and evac'd as many wounded and non-essential civilians as they could, often at night and under fire. Fighter and attack pilots got the credited headlines, but the C-130 crews made sure the city held out, and they paid a price. Some herky bird outfits took 50% casualties. Anyway, I think that about does it for tonight. I'm going to go get some rest before Command thinks of something else. Anyway, I think that about does it for tonight. I'm going to go catch some Zeds before RAAF Command comes up with any other ideas. But you can look forward to having some B-1 Lancers join the skies with you. I mean, nothing is confirmed so far. At least I haven't seen it, but the the US is going to begin retiring its fleet of Cold War Lancers due to the increased focus on the next generation B-21 Raider stealth bomber. Could reviving the B-1R regional bomber concept provide Australia and other regional allies with a credible regional strike capability? Fortune has smiled on us. Alright, and I'll make sure this book gets all the attention it deserves. A shave and an evening sky. What mission will I have tonight? I am not a bitter man, but to have nearly a quarter of my crew lost in a week is a difficult thing to accept. Even a few months seemed too long since my experience in mainland China. Losses can be terrible. My men and women cannot stand down a day to mourn their dead, much as they needed to. As the night hunters who sleep by day, we are making a difference. Every night, our black and grey super weapons lifted off for some special target or another. And the enemy still had not figured a counter. The strike cameras mounted on our planes were bringing pictures that the wing intel officers could scarcely believe, but at such a cost. Well, one sortie a day was a lighter load than the other air crews were bearing, and they are taking equal losses. The next mission is now. A fuel dump hidden in the bush that's supplying the terrorist vehicles. The Army surveillance says it's hidden near the Great Sandy Desert. Interesting. The first two will go in using the Mantra Durandal, and I'll follow with AGMs. No supporting aircraft on this one.
Coming up on Docker River, turning north. Boomerang 2, tallying 2 surveillance bandits with escorts. Tight formation. At IP, at border crossing. Tally fueling vehicles on IR, on the road to the target area. There, at least 2 Zero tank trucks.
So this is the work of the evil millionaire that's working in tandem with Grez. Due to the virus, Western Australia closes the borders on him, and he acts like a spoiled child. Hard to believe that my weapons are being used to protect against him.
Target in sight. Execute according to plan. Raj, I have visual. Warning, Mad Pad's launcher on the nose. Thanks, Kevin. Boomerang 2, toggling weapons.
Whoa! Those bombs blew upward. The next thing to a nuclear detonation, those fire fountains.
Damn. Don't think the AGMs are necessary, Turk. Flying down the road. What's that? 4 armored vehicles in a tight column. One of them is Sam. Missiles armed. Boomerang 1, AGMs away. Rifle, rifle, rifle. Turning south. We've hit our targets. Now we need to head to the nearest refueling point and await our next strike order.
The battle is continuing. The US Air Force is coming to our aid. They've sent a squadron of F-117A Nighthawk stealth fighters that they've taken out of mothball. Turns out keeping them intact for over a decade after retirement has paid off. The terrorists make good target practice for their guided bombs. And high above us were the U-2S spy planes. These versions were built for high-altitude tactical reconnaissance missions with side-looking radar, new avionics, and improved ECM equipment. Our combat missions continue on. In the testing areas, more new weapons are being born. An advanced space bomber built with subordinate island technology, bearing the name of Woomera, is scheduled to fly on the 19th of September. There is even rumor that the proposed upgrade of the B-1 Lancer bomber was being designed to take the place of the F-111. The Fighting Thunderbolt space program has also resumed, but nothing is yet written. All we need to do is hold out until these weapons are unleashed. With any luck, they will turn the tide and help bring the nightmare closer to an end. Slay the monsters and help humanity fight back. But until then, we fight. Through adversity to the stars.